I see a few familiar faces in the audience. So we had the first ZETA roundtable September, I want to say, September. So there may be a little bit of an overlap from last time, but most of the material will be new. So please don't hold me to it. I'll mention a couple of facts again because they haven't changed in the last 3 months. So, quick introduction. My name is Taimoor Zaman. I head up the commodities function within Enowa, which is the energy utility for NEOM region, and we have been looking at commodities of the future. So obviously we have to burn existing commodities for the build phase, but in terms of we're looking at decarbonization of the build phase using certificates. I've got my colleague Thomas Bose, who you may know, is leading that. I've got a few of my colleagues from Commodities as well, which they may chip in later today. So that is effectively, our remit is to oversee the transition from existing fuels up to 2030 and then transition to cleaner fuels. That is the remit for at least my team, within the wider NEOM goal of being net zero by 2030 onwards. So today we'll cover, I'm used to walking around, but I'll try and stick to where I am. So today the topic is the feasibility of trading hub in the region. Obviously we represent NEOM, therefore our angle is more from a KSA, from the kingdom's perspective, but obviously to build a commodity hub, you need as many counterparties as possible. So we're open and willing to work and collaborate with any counterparties in the region, including Abu Dhabi, Dubai, etc., other countries, which we'll dive a little deeper in those topics. But the structure of the presentation today is we'll briefly cover some of the support pillars of why we think a commodity trading hub or a commercial trading hub for commodities of the future is beneficial. We will then cover some of the characteristics and the requirements of developing an efficient trading hub. And then we'll focus on some of the best practices around the world and then move into a little bit more NEOM specific. So we'll bore you with a few NEOM specific details and what that means for us. And last but not least, we'll link that to some of the physical activities in how we're developing the fuel hub or the commodities hub in NEOM from our perspective. So first and foremost, I think we'll start with the why. Why are we even discussing this in the first place? You heard the presentations from my colleagues, which talked about the why in a bit more detail. So I'll briefly cover from NEOM's perspective. There are two key drivers. First, the first one is, and you see that across the slide here as well, is the economic incentive. So there's a sound economic case for the region to transition towards cleaner fuels. There are several reasons. I heard CBAM, mentioned a few times, carbon border adjustment mechanism. So there's a clear regulatory hard justification for businesses to pay a little bit more if they want to export, say, steel into European Union markets, which is one of the biggest markets in the world. So there are economic reasons, but there are also ESG reasons, so sustainability goals. And obviously we happen to be in Dubai. COP28 is taking place in the next few days, so the timing is perfect. And I think my colleague Sami reliably informed us as a team a couple of days ago that this is the first time, our understanding is that the NOCs, the national oil companies, are expected, I stress on the word expected, to actually join the discussion in COP22, 28 even. So, which actually means it's a massive shift because partly, obviously, the chairman of one of the NOCs in the region is one of the hosts for COP28. And if you can involve players like the NOCs into the discussion, not only they have the relevant capex and large project experiences, but also being the biggest polluters, if they can start to, can you still hear me okay? Is it still working? If one of the biggest polluters can start to self-cannibalize their own markets and transition towards cleaner fuels, That, for us, I think, is the holy grail, which is also the reason why, if you think about it, if you take a step back, why NEOM came into being in the first place, from a kingdom's perspective. It's looking at the future, looking to diversify away from the existing fossil fuel economies and moving towards a more cleaner, diversified economy. So NEOM is another example of innovation and technology. Lots of investment in NEOM, as you can tell from the outside as well. And that's spurring a lot of innovation in how we are executing or how we're trying to answer some of the existing problems in a new way. So we'll give you an example. Water desalination, for example. We have a zero liquid discharge policy in NEOM. So lots of things which we can't share at the moment, but there's a lot of innovation which is being forced into that discussion, looking at state-of-the-art technology, how do we implement the world-first projects in many parts of the value chain when it comes to water desalination, when it comes to producing electricity, and so on. And of course, you already know, NEOM Green Hydrogen Company we have the biggest electrolyzer in the world, which is past FID, by the way, which is the important point. You may hear things, but which is the biggest. It's 2 gigawatts, and it's 600 tons, I want to say, of capacity. 650. Thank you. Cheers. You'll keep me straight. I know you did that last time as well. So I'll stay honest. I promise. But long story short, lots of innovation, massive ambition, which is also, we're trying to move towards, as I said, diversifying economic incentive, which is obviously all about job creations. Any government in the world, one of the biggest items on the agenda is job creation, preparing for the future, upskilling your workforce. So all of that is new. And all of that is also one of the key, I would say this slide is a good macro summary, a summary of macro drivers, why a clean commodities trading hub is going to be beneficial for the region. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail as we go along. So before we actually go into the benefits and how to make it work, we'd like to stick with the why and the what on this slide. So on the left, on your left, the characteristics which are required to develop an efficient trading hub for commodities of the future. On the right, you see the requirements. So the general theme on this side is market infrastructure and making sure the information sharing is as transparent as possible. So rule number 1 for trading any commodity in the world, if the information is opaque, if the information isn't shared in a transparent manner with all the participants at the same time, there will be inside information sharing, which will discourage confidence in the market. And if you don't have confidence, it's a herd mentality, you will not have liquidity. So the first thing first is, in terms of getting a well-functioning trading hub going, we need to come up with standardized processes. And I know Jan and Paul, when you guys started EFAT, the first thing you did at the time, which I heard from yourselves last time, was you started looking at standardizing contracts. And that's ingredient number 1. That sounds pretty common sense and basic, but that is the most crucial part. Standardization of contracts and information sharing and the financial mechanism and the regulatory, I'm slightly delving into the right side, government support is absolutely must to instill confidence, invite counterparties to transact with each other. You have confidence that if something goes wrong, there's a regulatory mechanism in place. All of these things need to be done first before the first trade can take place. And I'm not going to talk about certification and standards, because there was a question earlier as well, and I think we talked about because that's a topic by itself. So we'll park that for now. But if you have any questions later, please let us know. But we are also, as NEOM, working with the relevant stakeholders in the region and in Europe in certifying green hydrogen and how to progress that discussion forward. On the right side, what's important is that I think the key message on the right side is, in terms of the requirements, is Government support, no-brainer. I won't spend too much time on that one. But on the infrastructure side, infrastructure when it comes to developing a trading hub, an efficient trading hub, we believe both physical and digital infrastructure is absolutely key. So for us to, a bit like Henry Hub, we'll talk about Henry Hub. For others in the room, if you don't, I mean, I'll assume you don't know, apologies, I'm sure you do. Henry Hub and other hubs where you trade commodities, you always have some sort of physical infrastructure behind them. So to give you an example, TTF gas on the continent is churned at least 20 times before the molecules are actually consumed by the end consumer. So, but before as the volume is traded, it is the physical molecules are being stored somewhere. And typically, they'll be stored in a storage, or they are being produced as the commodity is being traded. So similarly, there is always a need for some sort of physical storage or physical hub, which is something NEOM is actively thinking of as part of its urban planning process, and looking into the future. And our thinking very much is around, okay, we need fuels now or commodities now, but how do we design the physical infrastructure to store commodities of the future? Hydrogen being one of them, as an example. Obviously comes with challenges. How do you store hydrogen for a long period? Having said that, one I think interesting point to mention here is that the storage of electricity is becoming more and more commercially viable, and hydrogen, as an example, is very similar to electricity in the sense that both of these commodities, if you want to call them commodities, are not really fuels by themselves. They're essentially carriers of energy, or they're storage medium, if you really think about it. So if we can store electricity, I'm sure we can store hydrogen as well. And by the way, if we can trade electricity, and if electricity can be a liquid market, hydrogen is an easy one. Because electricity, because of the physics, because it's not just supply and demand like crude oil can be, it's congestion-driven, system network constrained, etc. The price can be very locational, whereas hydrogen, once we get everything standardized, once we get the framework, legal frameworks speaking to each other, hydrogen would be a much easier market to develop, similar to gas. If compared to power, that's why we are confident that NEOM can actually play a key role, given the amount of hydrogen we are looking to produce in the next few years to come. And other commodities, by the way. Hydrogen is being used just as an example at this stage. So we've covered the what. No, we've covered the why and the what a little bit. Now we move on to the benefits of an efficient trading hub in the region. By the way, may I just ask by raise of hands, how many of you have worked around trading or know? Would you say know about trading? So I can tailor my presentation. Okay, around 30%. Thank you. Cheers. Yeah. So that's why I won't use too many acronyms then. Exactly. So in terms of what is the main benefit of trading commodities? Anyone want to venture a guess? Not the ones who raised hands earlier. What do you think is the main benefit of a trading hub? No? Anyone? Go on, Max. Awesome. Thank you. And what's the benefit of liquidity? Why is liquidity helpful? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Perfect. So liquidity, I would say, price discovery, efficient price discovery. Liquidity enables efficient price. You've trained him well, actually, Jan. Yeah, you passed the test, actually. So one of the main benefits of an efficient trading hub is an efficient price discovery mechanism, which is reflective of supply and demand fundamentals at a given point in time. And that can only be done if you have enough trades going through the system. To give you an example, if I move on to, if my pointer works, I'll try that. There we go. If I move on to price stability, this one talks about bid-offer spread or bid-ask spread. Effectively, if you don't have enough liquidity, the price and the offer, the price between what the buyer is willing to pay and what the seller is willing to accept will be very, very, very large. The difference between the two will be very large. As you have more and more liquidity, that difference narrows, and that reduces the volatility, believe it or not. I mean, if there is volatility based on supply and demand, then so be it. But if you have liquidity, that provides stability, that provides an efficient way of pricing that particular commodity. And it's an open and transparent way and a cost-efficient manner if everything is standardized and if everything is being traded on one platform where you encourage all the counterparties to come to that platform and transact. That reduces, because of economies of scale, and as the trust builds, you ramp up the transaction, and therefore your price discovery becomes more and more efficient. And that is what we need to do to kick off a clean commodities hub. And we're looking forward to working with ZETA as Enowa in developing the first standard agreements and to get the ball rolling on that front. This is a very trading specific topic, arbitrage opportunities. Without teaching you to suck eggs or boring you to death if you're not interested in trading, arbitrage is essentially trying to make use of price discrepancies if there is not enough liquidity in the market. This is where actually, in an efficient market where you see a gap, arbitrage quickly goes away because if it's an efficient market, traders will come in, capitalize on that opportunity, buy and sell. For example, if Henry Hub is 50 pence per therm and Europe is trading at 60 and the cost of shipping gas is 5, traders will come in and start shipping gas from Henry Hub into NBP, UK, or into the continent straight away, and that will then reduce the arbitrage because the demand will go up in US and supply will increase in Northwest Europe. Cool. I will pause there for a second and take a step back now a little bit without boring you too much. So I went into the details of what an efficient trading hub looks like, what are the ingredients to make it a success. And this has been done before. Jan mentioned this earlier. Our colleague, yourself, you mentioned this earlier. It has been done before. And some of the examples you see here are actually of electricity power markets across the globe. And it's interesting because you may think of, I mean, UK was probably, I might be biased here, but UK was the first market to liberalize. Sorry, apologies my European colleagues on the continent, but that's true. However, since then, the liquidity has actually moved onto the continent massively. So the gas is one example. Electricity trading, UK used to be quite liquid. Germany is much more liquid. Other markets, France is becoming more and more liquid as well. The point being here is that, for me, it's very interesting. If you take a step back, and if I was in Paul's position 25 years ago, I don't think I would have been as ambitious thinking that power can be a liquid market, especially because power is very, just the physics of it. As I said, it's not a commodity like gas or oil, which you can just store and just it's purely based on supply and demand. You can reduce the production, you can increase the power needs to be consumed and produced at the same time on a second by second basis, ideally. And obviously you can store power, electricity, but it's not. And also with power, even for example, US is a good example. US has got locational pricing. So in terms of US, the northeast of US PJM market, which isn't illustrated here, New York and Penn State, the price is at a local substation point, almost at a street level point in some ways, which is really interesting. How do you get liquidity there? So the point we're trying to make is that if electricity markets, especially some of these green renewable generation electricity, can be traded efficiently, hydrogen and ammonia and e-fuels and methanol can easily be set up as long as there's confidence in the market, as long as there's standardization, there's a legal framework, and there's a centralized platform where people come together, counterparties come together. And that is what we're looking to achieve and work with ZETA and other partners to set up a trading hub within the region. One interesting point to note here is that we haven't mentioned carbon on this because carbon is a topic by itself because of various reasons. We mentioned ETS, European Trading Scheme, CBAM, and even in Europe, carbon is a policy-driven instrument. It's not really a commodity, although from a trading point of view, it is a commodity. The way it's traded is you have an auction, and those auctions are heavily manipulated from a trading point of view by the governments, rightly so, to keep the price at a certain level, and the trading is done in the secondary market over the counter. It's a liquid market, but it's a very different type of commodity, which is why we're reluctant to actually compare that with what we're trying to achieve with commodities of the future, i.e. hydrogen, ammonia, etc. Any questions at this stage? All right, I'm doing a great job. Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, everyone tells me every day. You're very kind, very charming. Cool. Right. So another reason why we believe this region is primed is set up to actually become the future hub of clean commodity trading is also because of the pure geographical location and the future ambition of how the global economy is shaping up in the next few decades or years. Back in announced, G20. This was back in, I want to say, August, this year, September. Thank you, So the Prime Minister of India announced, effectively with the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, this new initiative where a subsea cable will be built between KSA and north of India, and the purpose is to export green electrons, green electricity through a subsea cable into India. So it'll be currently the largest subsea cable is between UK and Norway. It's called Norwegian Subsea Link, NSL. But if this goes ahead, will be the largest of its kind. So that's one. And at the same time, a name was given, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. That's right, Sammy, right? That's an official name. So the name was given to this initiative. And as you can see, towards the left, depending on how you look at it, but towards the left, you have the northwest of Europe. And through Greece, the plans are to actually export electrons into Europe. And molecules, hydrogen as well, which is on the next slide, by the way. And to the right of the region, you have the other big economy towards the east, which is India. So just purely from a physical location perspective, and this is where NEOM sits, we see ourselves in a very strategic location where we can develop a physical field hub, as well as encourage a vibrant, dynamic, liquid trading hub, which can facilitate efficient price discovery within the region. Let me just caveat this by saying that these, obviously, like in any country, in any part of the world, government support is absolutely key. Policymakers need to be aligned, and that's some of the things where NEOM can help, and we can actually, work with the government, the Ministry of Energy, the regulator, the policymakers, the key stakeholders up the chain, in actually convincing the stakeholders that this is the right direction for the local countries, for the local region, sorry, I should say, to start developing a local trading hub as opposed to having fixed term contracts. Because one of the challenges we have, which I should have mentioned in the financial mechanisms previously, is subsidies. So one example is both in the Emirates and in the Kingdom, as an example, and other Gulf countries, gas price is heavily subsidized. It has no indexation or link with the international gas market price, which could be 10 times high sometimes, depending on where the price is. So because of that subsidy, moving to a free supply and demand driven price discovery mechanism or a trading hub is a challenge, is a massive pivot from the existing setup. But if you look into the future and some of the supporting pillars that I mentioned, there's a strong incentive for the policymakers to actually listen to us and work with us and actually start to move in that direction. I know in the Emirates, in Oman as an example, which is Oman implemented a day-ahead spot market for the power market about a couple of years ago, and they're doing a great job so far. I know Emirates is looking at it. Abu Dhabi in particular is looking at a day-ahead market, and other parts of the Gulf region are looking at similar initiatives. So it requires a collaboration between government, counterparties, thought leadership, other stakeholders. So we need to come together, organize ourselves a little bit better, but at the same time, it won't be easy to achieve what we're trying to achieve here. Right, so as I said, now that we've talked about the benefits of liquidity, I'll make it a little bit more specific to NEOM, because it's always, when we present, we find audiences always interested in NEOM specific topic as well sometimes. So just a bit of a flavor on NEOM's potential. So NEOM has, it was mentioned earlier that wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine, especially on the continent towards Europe. Whereas with NEOM, we have strong wind, especially overnight, during certain times of the year, but most of the time overnight, strong winds. And then we have the sun all the time, literally zero cloud cover. For some of my European colleagues, we have zero cloud cover here, which was, so it's easier to actually forecast solar, even more easier, I should say. A location, I've talked about location, the strategic location a few times. Within the kingdom, and also we know in other parts of the Gulf countries, in the kingdom, as an example, kingdom itself has a target of achieving 50% renewable generation in the power sector by 2030. NEOM's target is, of course, 100% renewable. So NEOM is aiming for 100% renewable. But overall, even the wider kingdom, which is a massive economy by itself, a G20 economy, is looking to very, very rapidly displace liquid burning in the power sector and move towards renewables as quickly as possible. So in terms of regional leadership, NEOM is here. We have clear mandate from our CEO, Paul. You're friends with Peter Terriam. So you know this, you can vouch for it. We have the mandate and we have the support within Enowa from the senior-most stakeholders to make this happen and work with the relevant stakeholders, and that's why we're here today. One of the challenges, like with any hub that you're trying to develop, and I remember, I think, Jan, you mentioned when you were looking at EFET, when you were looking to develop a new market in Europe, there were only one or two contracts that were being traded or exchanged at the time. So you have to start from somewhere, but that doesn't mean that it is a challenge that cannot be solved. But yeah, initially that is a limiting factor, having limited liquidity. So we'll have to encourage more and more counterparties to come and participate. And we're already engaging with some of the big players, the NOCs, some of the European large energy companies who are open to it and are showing interest as we speak. But we need to have something on the ground first before we can transact. Subsidies, I've already mentioned this. And I think last but not least, again, from a NEOM's perspective, this is public knowledge. We are working towards our own regulatory and legal framework, similar to the DIFC, if that's the right word to use. Having a free zone, which would basically cover the size of almost as big as Belgium, which is NEOM, in terms of land size. So all of this will have its own legal and regulatory framework, which will be different to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's framework, just to encourage international investment and encourage a more dynamic economic ecosystem. So I mentioned earlier in our presentation that NEOM has the largest hydrogen electrolyzer or hydrogen project in the world, which has passed FID. We raise private capital. It's not just government funded. The FID was the capital raised earlier this year, in March, valued at $8.4 billion. So it's past FID. It's 2 gigawatt electrolyzer. The second largest, please correct me if wrong, is at the moment, is 200 megawatts, but there's another one that your company's working on, which is in Spain, which is 750 megawatts.
One in Sweden for 700.
Sorry, Sweden.
Sweden 750.
750. So has that passed FID yet? Almost. So I'm not going to count that one. so yeah. So I mean, I hope it does, but it's because there are lots of projects being announced, but a lot of them kind of then water away. And I'm sure your project is not one of them. But if you look at the FID projects, NEOM is 2,000 megawatts. The next biggest one, which is past FID, is I think 200 megawatts. So NEOM is currently 10 times bigger than the second biggest hydrogen project in the world.
Outside China.
Please elaborate.
No, in China, they tell us that there's 500 megawatts for the operation.
Really, and I'm sure that we can trust what they said. So enough said. I'm here to represent NEOM, so let me buy my time. But even if it's 500, still at least 4 times smaller than what we already have. Is red. Okay, okay, got it. Understood. Still, we're still bigger. Is the point we're trying to make. So what we're saying is there's this real commitment, there's real money, and not just government support or government direction. Private capital has been raised for this project, and FID has been passed. Construction's on its way. An additional to actually fulfill RED 2 obligations, RED 3 even. Effectively, how you define green hydrogen in terms of European Union is concerned. 4 gigawatts of renewable electricity projects have been commissioned. So roughly one, please don't quote me on this, but half of that is wind, the other half is solar. And all of this will not be grid connected. So just to fulfill that, one of the temporal requirements of RED 3 and RED 2 is the fact that the electricity will be consumed by the electrolyzers at the same time it is being produced, which is a game changer in terms of standardization. Again, different topic altogether. We won't go into the details of that, otherwise I'll bore you too much. But so far, these certificates that we talk about, guarantee of origins, etc., to prove your electricity is coming from a green source, doesn't have to be produced at the same time as you're consuming. That electricity could have been produced a year ago, in theory, and you could claim that clean electricity against your consumption this year, as an example, which kind of defeats the purpose, because the whole point of electricity is that you burn more when you're actually contributing towards the peak. But I'll stay away from that topic. The point is, we are complying with RED 3 strict requirements, one of the most strict requirements in the world for this project. And that's why we are constructing 4 gigawatts of wind and solar only to produce hydrogen for this project. One topic which comes up a lot is, okay, what are you going to do with this hydrogen? There is no demand for hydrogen at the moment. Different topic, we won't touch on it because the theme today is trading hub. But what we can confirm is that there is a guaranteed offtake agreement in place. So Air Products, which is one of the equity stakeholders for the project, along with NEOM, have guaranteed the offtake of ammonia. So the hydrogen will be converted into ammonia, so ammonia can be shipped across around the world. And sold to relevant end consumers, mostly the Far East and potentially Europe. And I think one analogy which comes to mind, which I quite like using again and again, is hydrogen as a commodity or a commodity that can be traded is akin to, is very similar to how LNG was, liquefied natural gas was, about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And at the time, there was a lot of skepticism around, it's not like oil, you can't put it in a tanker, it's not safe, it can't be, if you have to liquefy it to minus 600 degrees, how do you make that work? And, look where we are now. And actually, that was mostly driven by decarbonization agenda as well. Dash for gas was one of the phrases being used in Europe at the time. Let's get rid of coal, let's get rid of oil. And that is what happened. If you look back, that is a success story in terms of how LNG and gas kind of penetrated the power sector as an example. And now renewables are doing the same, and therefore now hydrogen is actually following suit. So I think I will skip this slide, but the key message here is that there is another. Sammy, do you want to? So this is more about the pipeline being constructed, isn't it, all the way into Europe, from all the way from from Ras Laffan. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Thank you, Sam. So I think the key takeaway from this slide is interesting. If you look at where the price is trading at, and if you want to use the word trading loosely in Europe for hydrogen at the moment, I see you yawning. Sorry if I'm boring you. Apologies. Is around $10 per kilogram in Europe at the moment. So if based on the analysis here, you could. There's potential to ship hydrogen all the way through Greece into Northwest Europe, and the landed price from the 2030s onwards will be 2.7. And I think the minute you bring hydrogen down to about $2 per kilogram, it becomes the marginal plant in European markets. And that is actually the magic number here. So it's very interesting, actually, which actually makes me very optimistic about the region and decarbonization and the role of hydrogen in the power sector more globally, especially in Europe and in the Middle East. If the price can be around $2 per kilowatt hour per kg, then that actually makes it a very interesting commercial proposition and very, very well synced with the decarbonization agenda, because renewables are intermittent, solar, wind only available when they are. You can only store so much, but if you can actually have super peakers where you can just burn hydrogen and dispatch them when you need to produce electricity, that becomes your holy grail option. So I will skip the last slide, but well, I won't actually. I was lying. Very quickly, we are looking at a physical hub as well, because the idea is that you need to have physical storage availability, which and off the back of that physical storage, physical hub of fuel storage, commodity storage, you can have standardized trading products. And around those standardized trading products, you can have hedging, you can have derivatives, which will naturally, emerge around the actual commodity. But step one is standardization, legal agreement, contracts, bit of a physical hub going, and get your first contracts, first counterparties to start to trade. It doesn't have to be thousands of trades from the word go. As long as we have 1 or 2 trades, hopefully on a daily basis, even monthly to begin with, we can make a start. So on that note, thank you very much for your time. I think I overran my time, but hope you found the presentation useful, and any questions, please let us know. Thank you very much.